Sierra Carter was known for staying calm, focused, and out of trouble. But when three boys decided to hang a rope in front of her locker as a cruel joke, they had no idea just how badly they miscalculated, because Sierra wasn't just any student. She's a black belt in karate, trained since she was 6. And her father? A recently retired Navy veteran with years of elite experience and a very clear code about how to respond to injustice. But this story isn't just about personal strength. It's about a school that looks the other way, a local officer who avoids real accountability, and a system that tries to silence voices like Sierra's. When the blame gets twisted back onto her instead of the ones who started it, Sierra decides she's had enough. She won't stay quiet. Not anymore. So the real question becomes, what happens when the one they thought they could push aside turns out to be the one who calls them out? Before we dive deeper, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is one you'll want to be here for. The morning sun stretched across the quiet streets of Oak Ridge Heights as Dante Carter's black SUV pulled up in front of Ridgeview Middle School. The building stood tall, with polished windows and picture-perfect lawns, a symbol of comfort and control. Sierra sat beside him in silence, her braids neat, her backpack tucked tight in her arms. Dante switched off the engine and turned toward her, his voice steady, the same voice that had led entire teams through missions around the world. "What do we say before practice?" he asked, calm and clear. Sierra kept her eyes on the entrance, watching the stream of mostly white students heading inside. "Control your mind. Control your actions," she replied, words she'd repeated for 8 years on the dojo floor. "Exactly," Dante nodded. "You're walking into a different kind of test. But you've got something most kids here don't. Discipline." Sierra smoothed her sweater, even though there were no wrinkles. "I know, like in the dojo. Observe first, react later." Dante smiled and gently squeezed her shoulder. "You're my warrior, not because you can land a perfect kick, but because you know when not to. That's power." Outside, students passed, some glancing curiously at the new faces. Sierra inhaled deeply, like she always did before stepping onto the mat. "I'm right here if you need me," Dante added, "but I also know you've got this. You're stronger than they'll ever see coming." She gave him a small smile, then paused with her hand on the door. "Did you ever feel like this?" she asked. "Being the only one?" Dante's expression softened. "Every single day. But I didn't let their opinions define me. I let my work do the talking. That's how things change." Sierra stepped out. The air smelled like fresh grass. And something else. Distance. She walked in slowly, her steps calm and deliberate. Inside, the building buzzed with noise. Lockers slammed, laughter echoed, teachers called out. But Sierra noticed the shift. Conversations dipped when she walked by. Whispers floated behind her. She kept moving. At her locker, she focused on the dial, ignoring the eyes. A group of girls fell silent as she approached, then moved away quickly. Her face stayed still. Control, just like Dad taught her. The first few classes passed in a blur. Nobody sat beside her. When she answered questions perfectly, some teachers raised their brows. At lunch, she sat alone, quietly watching everything. That's when she noticed them. 3 boys, leaning on lockers like they owned the place. Confident, comfortable, like they'd never been told no. The tallest, brown hair, expensive shoes, met her eyes and smirked. Sierra didn't break stride, but her awareness sharpened. As she passed, the comment came. "Check out her hair," he said, not even trying to be subtle. "Looks like something from the hardware store." That was Troy Hadley. She'd caught his name earlier in history class. The second boy, Chase Dunham, laughed too hard. His flashy clothes, his exaggerated posture, clearly someone who followed others to stay relevant. The third one just watched, broader, quieter, writer keen. She'd hear more about him later, son of one of the biggest developers in the city. Troy wasn't done. "Bet she doesn't even wash it," he added with fake concern. My dad says some people have different hygiene habits. The others laughed, but Sierra didn't stop. Her stride stayed even, her hands stayed relaxed, and her focus sharper than ever. Years of training had taught Sierra one powerful truth: real strength is measured by restraint. As she turned the corner and reached her locker, she didn't react to the voices behind her. Instead, she listened, not with emotion, but with precision, the way she would analyze an opponent before a tournament. Their comments were carefully crafted, just vague enough to escape adult attention, but clear enough to deliver their message. Sierra remained composed, calmly organizing her books, memorizing their names, faces, and voices. Her father had always said that knowing more than your opponent was half the battle, so she stayed still, aware, and in control. The bell rang, and the hallways emptied in a rush of footsteps and closing lockers. Sierra shut her own locker quietly, slung her bag over her shoulder, and walked away from the laughter without flinching. She was her father's daughter, and she knew that sometimes the most powerful action is not reacting at all. The cafeteria buzzed with the usual midday energy, trays clattering, snack wrappers rustling, and dozens of overlapping conversations. Sierra sat alone at the far end of a long table, her lunch laid out with quiet care: grilled chicken, brown rice, and steamed vegetables, a meal straight from her father's SEAL nutrition days. She could feel eyes on her. A nearby group of girls watched, whispering behind their polished nails and glossy hair. Still, Sierra kept her movements calm, every gesture thoughtful, like a kata performed with purpose and grace. Hey, you're Sierra, right? She looked up. Madison Reynolds stood next to her table, clutching a designer bag. Her perfectly styled hair framed a face that looked more unsure than unkind. Behind her, a group of girls waited, watching with curious smirks. Yes, Sierra answered softly, keeping her tone neutral. Madison shifted her weight, glancing toward her friends. We were just wondering if you maybe wanted to sit with us. The words sounded more like a suggestion than a genuine offer. Sierra didn't need her father's training to spot the unease in Madison's eyes, the subtle tension, the glances backward. It didn't feel real. But Sierra also remembered her dad's lesson: take the higher path when you can. Thank you, she said with polite calm, gathering her lunch and walking over to their table with the same confidence she carried into competition. As she sat down, the girl scooted away slightly, leaving an obvious space around her. The air felt thick, like that brief moment before a sparring match starts. So, one girl, Ashley, said with a drawn-out tone, "What's for lunch?" Sierra opened her container without a word, revealing her meal. The reaction was instant. Loud, exaggerated noises, coughs, groans. "Oh, wow, what is that smell?" Madison asked, now clearly not hiding her discomfort. "Smells like someone forgot their gym bag over summer break," Ashley added, triggering a round of giggles. "Maybe it's her hair," another girl whispered just loud enough. "My mom says they use like oils and stuff." Sierra didn't flinch. Her hands stayed steady. Her father's words echoed in her mind. The need to tear someone down is a sign of their weakness. Your control, that's your strength. She calmly closed her lunchbox and stood, her back straight and movements composed. "Thanks for the invitation," she said, voice clear, expression unbothered. Their laughter faltered. Sierra walked back to her original table without once looking over her shoulder. She reopened her lunch and began eating again, posture perfect, breathing slow, just like during a difficult kata drill. The rest of the day passed in a blur, quick glances, quiet comments, the kind of atmosphere designed to chip away at someone's confidence. But Sierra never lost her balance. She answered questions in class, took notes with precision, and kept her movements graceful and calm. That evening at home, she sat across from her father at the kitchen table. Dinner was just like always: grilled fish, quinoa, roasted vegetables, food meant to strengthen both body and mind. How was school today? Dante asked, his voice calm, steady, the same as always. Sierra pushed a piece of fish around her plate. Fine, she answered softly, avoiding his eyes. Dante watched her closely. Years of reading people had trained him to notice even the smallest shift in energy. Just fine? He asked. Yeah, she said, chewing slowly. Nothing special. He didn't press, but she could feel the concern in his eyes, the way someone who's seen too much knows when something's being left unsaid. Later that evening, Sierra made her way to the garage they'd transformed into a home dojo. The space was simple: mats, equipment, a display of her belts, and a small shrine in the corner. She changed into her GI, tying her black belt with practiced precision. Centered on the mat, she began her kata. Each movement was clean, sharp, focused: punch, block, turn, strike. Her breathing fell into rhythm. The noise of the day, the whispers, the tension, it all melted away as her body moved in harmony with her training. She wasn't fighting to prove something. She was reminding herself who she was. Each movement was more than just muscle memory. It was a form of focus, a quiet discipline passed down from her father. For Sierra, kata wasn't about the motions alone. It was about balance, clarity, and finding stillness in the storm. As she flowed through the sequence, the garage echoed only with her breath and the soft whisper of her uniform. She didn't notice her father watching quietly from the doorway, pride in his eyes, shadowed by concern, before he turned and stepped away. The next morning, Sierra walked the familiar hallway with her usual quiet confidence. Her steps, like her spirit, were composed and measured. But something felt different. The chatter had stopped. In its place, silence. And then she saw it. Hanging from her locker was a thick rope tied into a haunting shape. A noose. Beneath it, a torn piece of paper drifted slightly in the hallway air. The message written in bold marker: "Know your place." The world seemed to slow, just like in those final moments before a match, where focus narrows and everything else fades. Her hands didn't tremble. Her breath remained steady. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and snapped 2 clear photos. Click, click, just like her father taught her. Document, then act. Mrs. Thompson, her English teacher, rushed over. Her face was pale, her words stumbling. This is awful." She fumbled with a pair of scissors, her hands shaking. Sierra stood calm and still, eyes steady. Across the hall, she spotted them: Troy, Chase, and Ryder, standing by the water fountain, watching, not laughing, just pleased, confident in their protection, their last names, and their father's connections. Then came Principal Matthews, polished shoes squeaking across the glossy floors. "Everyone get to class," he barked before turning to Sierra, lowering his voice. "Please, come with me." As the noose came down, cut by trembling hands, Sierra walked beside the principal, head high, shoulders straight. She heard her father's words like armor. "Never let them see you rattled. Your calm is your strength." Principal Matthews' office looked more like a law firm than a school. Dark furniture, impressive degrees, a window with a perfect view of privilege. He sat down, adjusting his cuffs, speaking with careful authority. "Sierra, I want you to know, we take these incidents very seriously." Sierra met his eyes, voice clear. "It was a noose, Mr. Matthews, and a written threat." He hesitated, shifting in his chair. "Yes, well, sometimes students don't fully understand the implications of their actions. It may have been meant as a poorly executed joke." "A joke?" Sierra repeated flatly. "We'll investigate, of course," he said quickly, flipping through papers on his desk. "But things like this can be complicated, especially without solid evidence." "I have pictures," Sierra replied calmly, holding up her phone. He blinked, caught off guard. Yes, that helps. Still, we must avoid making assumptions without absolute certainty about who was involved." But Sierra had seen this kind of conversation before, just not at school. Her father had warned her, sometimes, power avoids conflict by pretending it doesn't see one. "Can I call my parents?" she asked. Of course," he said, gesturing to his office phone. But Sierra was already dialing her own. Her father answered instantly. "Dad," she said steadily, "someone tied a noose to my locker this morning," and left a message. The silence on the other end was sharp, heavy with contained fury. "Are you safe?" "Yes, I'm in the principal's office." "Stay there, I'm coming." Principal Matthews overheard and immediately shook his head. "That's not really necessary." "My father's coming," Sierra said firmly. It wasn't a suggestion. The next 20 minutes passed in tense quiet. Sierra sat perfectly still, her hands folded, posture disciplined. Every part of her presence a reflection of years of martial arts training. Principal Matthews made hushed phone calls. His voice was low, his words careful. Then the door opened. Dante Carter entered, in jeans and a simple shirt, but with a presence that turned the entire room still. He didn't need a uniform to command attention. His eyes scanned everything. Layout, exits, energy. "Sierra," he said gently, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Show me." She held up the phone. The photos were sharp, the message unmistakable. Dante studied them in silence, but Sierra could feel the weight in his grip, the tension just beneath his calm. It wasn't rage, it was resolve. Later that evening, in their kitchen, the photos lay on the table once more. On the screen, the rope looked even more deliberate, the message even colder. Dante stood at the counter, hands braced, eyes locked on the images. His expression didn't change, but something in the air did. "They just made this official," he said softly, his voice low and certain. "This is war." Sierra met her father's eyes, and in that steady gaze, she felt something deeper than fear or anger. She felt legacy, strength passed down through generations. "Then they're not ready for who we are," she said softly. The next morning, Sierra and Dante sat outside Principal Whitaker's office. The quiet hum of the hallway felt heavy. Sierra glanced at her father's hands, calm, resting gently on his knees. He had always told her, true strength isn't about raising your voice, it's about choosing when not to. "Mr. Carter, Sierra, come on in," Principal Whitaker called, his voice too cheerful to be real. Inside, the school counselor, Mrs. Hayes, was already seated. Sierra noticed how the principal's desk created a clear divide, like he was preparing to hand down a verdict. He began with formal words. "First, let me say how seriously we take anything that might make a student feel uncomfortable." "Uncomfortable?" Dante's voice was calm, but it carried weight. "A noose isn't about discomfort, it's a threat, and it carries a very specific history." Whitaker cleared his throat. "Yes, well, after speaking with a few students, we believe this may have been a poorly thought-out joke." Sierra felt her father's presence tighten beside her, still composed but with a quiet energy, like a coiled spring. "A joke?" he repeated evenly. Mrs. Hayes leaned forward, her smile overly sweet. "We've identified the students involved. They'll receive 1 day of in-school suspension." "1 day?" Sierra finally spoke, her voice low but sharp. "For a threat like that?" "Now, Sierra," Mrs. Hayes began, tone soft and patronizing, "I know this is hard, but sometimes we have to take the high road. Show them you're the better person." Dante placed a steady hand on his daughter's shoulder. "What evidence did you find?" he asked. Whitaker hesitated. "We conducted interviews." "Security footage?" Dante interrupted. "There are 3 cameras in that hallway. I counted." "Unfortunately," Whitaker replied, adjusting his tie, "there was a technical malfunction. No footage is available." Sierra watched her father's expression remain composed, even as his grip on her shoulder grew firmer. "Convenient," he said, voice unchanged. Whitaker shifted in his seat. "Mr. Carter, I understand this is upsetting, but these are good students from respected families. They admitted it was foolish, and we've responded appropriately. Good students? Dante asked, repeating the phrase slowly. Would you call it foolish if someone tied a noose on your daughter's locker? Or is it only a joke when it happens to certain students? Whitaker's face flushed. Mrs. Hayes jumped in again. Sierra, the boys feel awful. Sometimes the best answer is forgiveness. Stop saying that, Sierra said, calm but firm. Taking the high road doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. Whitaker's expression hardened. Our decision is final. The students will serve their suspension today. I suggest we all move on from this unfortunate situation. Dante stood slowly, his movements deliberate. My daughter came to you with respect, through the right channels, and now we see exactly what that gets her. Whitaker narrowed his eyes. Is that a threat? No, sir, Dante said. Just an observation. Come on, Sierra. They walked out together in silence, their footsteps echoing down the corridor. Behind them, Mrs. Hayes called out something about kindness and being the bigger person, but Sierra didn't turn around. That evening, Sierra sat at the kitchen table, her dinner untouched. They're not going to help us, are they? Dante gently set his fork down. Number people like Whitaker are there to protect the system that protects them. So what now, she asked. He met her eyes. Remember what I taught you about facing bigger opponents? Sierra nodded. Patience, position, pressure points. Exactly. Justice works the same way. It doesn't come from people like Whitaker. It comes from preparation, from truth, from building something they can't ignore. She looked down, thinking about the smirks she'd seen in the cafeteria. They're still laughing, she said. They think they got away with it. Dante gave a small nod. Let them laugh. That's how you know they're not ready. He stood, disappeared into his office, and returned with a fresh notebook. He placed it gently in front of her. Start writing it all down. Every comment, every moment, every time they try to hide behind a smile. Build the case they think you're too quiet to make. Sierra opened the notebook. The blank page felt like the beginning of something stronger than anger. She dated the top, then began. Troy's whisper in math class, Chase's bump in the hallway, Ryder's smirk in history. Dante watched her write. This isn't just about them. It's about a system that expects you to stay silent. Sierra looked up, her pen still in hand. Then we fight both. The next morning, Sierra walked through Ridgeview's front doors. The tiny microphone clipped to her collar felt light, almost invisible, but powerful. Her father had shown her how to use it that morning, calm and precise as always. Remember, he'd said, evidence lasts longer than anger. The hallway felt longer that day. As Sierra walked, the crowd of students parted silently, some looking away, others staring just a second too long. She kept her pace even, her breath steady, like during kata practice. Every footstep, every whisper was picked up by the small microphone hidden in her collar. Troy Hadley leaned against his locker, smirk wide and unapologetic. Hey, rope girl, he called out, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. Sierra's grip on her backpack tightened, but she didn't stop. What's wrong? Chase called across the hallway. Nothing to say? He mimed pulling a rope tight around his neck. A few students gasped. None spoke. Sierra's heart raced, but her expression never changed. Internally, she was logging everything. Time, place, faces. The mic recorded it all. In math class, Ryder sat behind her, making quiet choking sounds under his breath. Sierra didn't react. Her pencil moved steadily over equations. When she raised her hand to answer, he muttered, Careful. Might need a rope ladder for that. Mrs. Peterson glanced over, frowning, but said nothing. Sierra answered the question with clarity and calm. Another mental note, inaction from the teacher. Logged. Between classes, Madison appeared, the same girl who had pretended to be kind before. I just wanted to say, she began sweetly, I think what they did to you was totally wrong, even if you don't really, fit in here. Sierra met her gaze. Thank you for your concern, she replied, voice even, tone controlled. The mic caught Madison's awkward laugh as she walked away. At lunch, Sierra sat alone again, but this time she chose her seat carefully. She positioned herself to observe the entire cafeteria. She watched Troy and his crew, loud and confident, making casual jokes about hanging around and swinging by later. Teachers passed by, said nothing. Every moment, every word. Sierra wrote it all down later, documenting with quiet precision. Time, location, witnesses, direct quotes. Just like her father taught her, she wasn't just keeping notes, she was building a case. In gym class, the comments grew louder. "Think her dad taught her how to climb ropes too?" Chase said during roll call. "Maybe it's in the family," Troy added with a grin. Sierra stepped up to serve the volleyball with flawless technique. The crack of the ball echoed through the gym. She didn't need to speak. She let discipline do the talking. After school, the boys followed her again, staying just far enough back to deny it. "Need help tying your shoes, rope girl?" Ryder called out. Sierra closed her locker slowly, letting the hidden phone camera capture their reflections in the locker's surface. Then she turned and walked away. "What, too good for us now?" Troy shouted behind her. "Think you're better than everyone else?" She didn't look back, each step steady, each breath sharp and controlled. The mic caught it all, their voices, their footsteps, their laughter, until she stepped out the door. That evening, Sierra changed into her GE as Dante reviewed the day's footage. The garage dojo was quiet, focused. She tied her black belt, her movements deliberate and grounded. "Good work," Dante said, closing the laptop. "You captured everything we need." He stepped onto the mat. "Now we train harder." Sierra mirrored him, her stance firm, her breathing deep. The overhead lights stretched their shadows across the room. Father and daughter, teacher and student, focused, united. "They think silence means weakness," Dante said, his voice low and steady. "But you know better. You've got strength they can't understand." Sierra nodded and began her forms, each move deliberate, each stance rooted. The sounds of their practice filled the garage. Breath, motion, impact. This was their response, not with rage, but with skill, discipline, and control. Later, in the girls' locker room, Sierra changed after PE. Most students had already left. She moved slowly, folding her gym clothes neatly, alert to her surroundings, just like she'd been taught. Footsteps, heavy, intentional, trying to sound quiet. She turned. Troy, Chase, Ryder. They stepped into the changing area like they didn't care who saw. "This is the girls' locker room," Sierra said, voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. The microphone hidden in her shirt was already recording. Troy smirked. "We know. We just figured you could use a little extra education." He bounced a basketball in his hands. The hollow echo hit the walls like a warning. "Some bonus credit," Chase added, shifting slightly to block the exit. Sierra scanned the room the way her father had trained her, eyes sharp, reading distances, exit points, obstacles. 3 boys, 1 exit, 4 rows of lockers, no witnesses, just the way they planned it. "You should leave," she said quietly, her tone firm and clear. She stayed relaxed, her feet light, stance balanced. "Or what?" Ryder sneered. "Gonna go cry to Daddy again? Or maybe hang around after class?" Troy suddenly hurled the basketball at her head. Without flinching, Sierra ducked. The ball slammed into the metal lockers behind her with a crash. Her heart raced, but her breath stayed steady. "Nice reflexes," Troy said, stepping closer. "But you can't dodge everything." Chase lunged, his hand locked around her wrist. "Got you now, rope girl?" Sierra moved before he finished the sentence. Her body knew what to do. Twist, shift, redirect. She broke his grip and used his momentum, spinning behind him and locking his wrist at just the right angle. Pressure, not pain. Then came the sweep, precise, clean, dropping him hard onto the floor. The impact knocked the breath from his lungs. She let go immediately, stepping back into a defensive stance, calm, in control. "What the?" Troy shouted, his face flushing red. Chase crawled backward, holding his arm. "She attacked me," he gasped. "You saw it." Ryder took 1 step forward, fists clenched, but stopped. Something had changed. Sierra's gaze didn't waver, and for the first time, they hesitated. Then a voice sliced through the tension. "Miss Carter!" Mrs. Peterson stood in the doorway. Shock and disbelief etched across her face. "What's going on here?" "She attacked Chase," Troy snapped. "We just came to get our basketball and she went off." Sierra answered without raising her voice. "They threw the ball at my head. Chase grabbed me. I defended myself." Mrs. Peterson narrowed her eyes. "Boys, this is the girls' locker room. You shouldn't even be in here." She paused, looked at Chase on the floor. "But violence is never the answer, Miss Carter. Come with me to the principal's office." Sierra gathered her things in silence. She didn't protest. But as she walked past the boys, she saw it, their smirks returning, the shift in energy. They knew the system was about to protect them again. In Principal Whitaker's office, Sierra sat tall while he spoke about appropriate responses and school policy. Her recorded audio was dismissed. He claimed it didn't change the fact that she engaged in physical conflict. 3 days suspension, he announced, eyes down. "We have a zero-tolerance policy, Miss Carter. I trust you understand." Sierra gave a small nod. "I understand perfectly." When Dante picked her up, his expression remained unreadable as she explained. He listened quietly, hands steady on the wheel. "They're pushing," he said at last, "trying to get you to break. But you didn't. You stayed in control." Sierra looked down. "And I still got punished." Dante pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. "No," he said, "they're losing. They just don't see it yet." He turned to face her. "They wanted you to be the person they expect, but you gave them something stronger. Restraint, focus, truth. That scares them more than anything else." Sierra met his gaze. "So what do we do now?" "Now," Dante said, eyes sharpening, "we give them the truth. All of it." That night, Dante sat at his desk and began typing a formal request to the school, every word deliberate. "Dear Principal Whitaker, in light of recent events involving my daughter, Sierra Carter, I am formally requesting access to all Ridgeview Middle School policies regarding bullying, harassment, and disciplinary action. Additionally, I request access to any historical records related to prior similar complaints." He included citations from state education laws and public transparency codes. 20 years of military service had taught him, start by doing it by the book, and watch who panics. 30 minutes later, a new email arrived. Dante opened it and stopped. It wasn't a proper reply. It was a forwarded email chain, by mistake. The thread included messages between Principal Whitaker and Sheriff Hadley. Subject: Our situation at Ridgeview. Nolan, we need to talk about this Carter situation. Dad's asking for records now. He's getting close to those older complaints we handled. Recommendations? Dante's jaw tightened. He scrolled further. Each new message revealed more. A web of names, cover-ups, patterns, connections between the school and the sheriff's office, all hidden behind polite smiles and paper policies. But now it was in writing, and Dante Carter was no longer guessing. He had proof. Subject: Ari, situation at Ridgeview. Ron, handle it like we always do. Bury it in paperwork. Say the records are sealed for privacy. I'll make some calls if needed. This dad doesn't know how things work around here yet. Dante's jaw clenched as another message appeared. Subject: situation at Ridgeview. His kid might have recorded something. If she caught anything, it could be trouble. Tell Troy to back off for now. We can't afford to reopen the Anderson case from last year. Dante opened a new tab and searched. Anderson case, Ridgeview. Nothing came up in the press, but he found a buried forum post, a comment from someone in a parenting group. A black family left town suddenly after their son was involved in an incident at Ridgeview. No details, just whispers, quiet departures. Then Dante's phone buzzed. A text from Sierra. Dad, 3 more kids want to talk. They said the same thing happened to them. Dante stood and paced the room, mind racing. This wasn't just about Sierra. This was deeper, broader, a coordinated pattern. The sheriff, the principal, years of quiet cover-ups, families pushed out through intimidation, complaints buried, cases sealed. He needed backup. Someone who understood how this kind of system worked and how to take it apart. Scrolling through his contacts, Dante found the name, Nia Reynolds. They'd served together, him as team leader, her as combat medic. Now she was an investigative reporter, known for cracking stories that others were too afraid to touch. He tapped the call icon. 3 rings, then her voice. "Carter? This is a surprise. How's civilian life treating you?" "Nia," Dante said, his voice sharp like during mission briefings. "I need your help. Got time to meet?" "For you? Always. What's going on?" He looked at the email chain still glowing on his screen. "Rather show you in person. It's about my daughter's school, the principal, the sheriff, and a long history of things they've been hiding." There was a pause. Then her voice dropped into what their team used to call her mission tone. "Text me the address. I'll bring my laptop. And Dante, don't forward that email chain. Not to anyone. Don't let them know you've got it." "Already ahead of you," Dante replied. "Sierra's got audio too, and now we've got witnesses." "Good," Nia said. "We'll need everything. These small-town power circles, they're like fortresses. But even fortresses have weak points if you know where to look." An hour later, Nia sat at Dante's kitchen table, her laptop open, scanning through the emails. Her face hardened as she read. "This is gold," she said at last. "But it's just the surface. That Anderson case. I remember the name. No one ever talked, but there were rumors. If we can find the family, we might unlock the whole thing," Nia finished, already typing. Dante slid a cup of coffee across the table. "How do we play it?" "Quiet," she said. "We build the story. I'll start with transfer records, school board meetings, disciplinary files, see who else suddenly vanished." She looked up, locking eyes with him. "This stopped being just about Sierra the moment they sent that email. You know that, right?" "I do," Dante said, nodding. "That's why I called you. This ends here." "Won't be easy," Nia warned. "Sheriff's got influence. Principal's protected. Board probably knows more than they're saying." "When has that ever stopped us?" Dante asked, a hint of a smile cracking his calm. "Never has, never will," Nia replied, matching his energy. She turned back to her keyboard. "Let's get to work." At Ridgeview the next morning, Sierra walked through the school's front doors with her head high. The same calm exterior, the same microphone tucked into her collar. But something was different. The whispers were louder, more confident. "There she is, karate girl." Heard she almost broke Chase's arm. She didn't respond. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. "Let them talk. Every word they say is more evidence." At her locker, something caught her eye. 2 black students from her English class gave her quiet nods as they passed. A Latino boy she'd never spoken to made brief eye contact, then tapped his chest with a closed fist. Small gestures, but they meant something. In second period, a folded note landed on her desk. Sierra unfolded it cautiously, half expecting more hate. But the handwriting was neat, careful. "Thank you for standing up to them. Malik." She looked up. Across the room, Malik Jones quickly looked down, pretending to read. She recognized him, always quiet, always sitting alone, always shrinking into himself whenever Troy and his friends walked by. At lunch, Sierra didn't go to her usual corner. This time, she walked straight to Malik's table, empty, isolated. He looked up surprised, sandwich halfway to his mouth. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, voice calm, natural. Malik shook his head slowly. "Number not at all." He pushed his tray aside, making room. Sierra sat down without hesitation. This time, she wasn't alone. "They didn't actually hurt you in the gym, right?" Malik asked, hesitantly. "No," Sierra said as she unpacked her lunch. "But they tried, and that's the problem." Malik glanced around the cafeteria, nervous. Then he leaned in closer. "They've messed with me too, since last year. Not like they did to you, but still." Sierra reached into her pocket and slid something across the table, a small clip-on microphone, identical to the one she wore. "Tell your story," she said softly. "My dad's collecting evidence, and we've got someone investigating." Malik looked down at the mic like it might explode. I don't know." "You don't have to decide right now," Sierra replied. "But ask yourself, how many others are there? How many left because no one spoke up? For a moment, his eyes changed, fear giving way to something stronger, anger. With shaking hands, he picked up the mic. "What do I even say?" he whispered. "Everything," Sierra said. "When you're ready, press the button once to record, twice to stop." They spent the rest of lunch talking about regular things, classes, music, the mystery meat in the cafeteria. But Sierra noticed Malik kept touching his pocket, the mic inside, like he was holding on to courage. After school, Sierra found a small package in her locker. Inside, Malik's mic and a handwritten note. "I recorded everything. There are more of us. Thank you." That night, she sat beside her father in his home office, headphones on, listening to Malik's voice fill the room. At first, his words trembled. "It started last September," Malik began. "They cornered me in the bathroom, said I didn't belong, told me their dads ran this town." He described bruises from accidental shoulder checks, stolen money, threats whispered between classes, and teachers who looked the other way. "Last month," Malik continued, "they followed me home, said if I told anyone, they'd make sure my mom lost her job. Sheriff Hadley's wife is on the hospital board." Sierra glanced at her father. His face was calm, but she saw it, the faint tension around his eyes. It was the look he wore before planning a mission. More audio clips followed, short recordings from students who had seen Malik talking to Sierra. A girl described racial slurs written on her gym clothes. A boy recalled being threatened with false accusations. Dante finally removed his headphones and leaned back. "This is bigger than we thought." Sierra nodded, her chest tight. "They're scared, but they're starting to speak up." "Because you showed them it's possible," Dante replied. He began sorting the files, labeling each one on his laptop. Every voice, every story. "Each testimony is a brick," he said. "We're building something they can't ignore." Sierra thought about Malik's trembling fingers, about the silent nods in the hallway. "How many bricks do we need?" "As many as it takes," Dante answered. "The truth's like water. It finds cracks, leaks through the gaps, and once it starts flowing..." Another file uploaded, another voice, another piece of the truth. Later that week, in a quiet studio, Sierra sat across from Nia Reynolds. Only her silhouette was visible, shadowed against a dark backdrop, but her voice, steady, unshaken. "They hung a noose on my locker," Sierra said into the mic, "and when I defended myself, they suspended me. Not the boys who did it." Nia nodded, calm but focused. "And how did the school respond?" "They called it a prank," Sierra replied. "Gave the boys 1 day of in-school suspension. Told me to take the high road." That night at 6 p.m., the interview aired, leading into Nia's full investigative segment. Across the city, screens lit up with the headline, "Ridgeview exposed, school protects bullies, silences black student." In their living room, Sierra and Dante sat side by side, watching as Nia unfolded the story piece by piece. Audio clips played over footage of Ridgeview's spotless campus. Voices layered one over another, building a case. Sources confirm one of the accused is the son of Sheriff Nolan Hadley. Internal emails suggest coordination between school officials and local law enforcement. Efforts were made to dismiss or hide incidents, with pressure placed on families to remain silent. Sierra's phone buzzed. First, a message from Malik. "You did it. You really did it." Then others. "Thank you. You're not alone. We see you. Stay strong." Sierra looked at her father, her expression calm, but behind it was something stronger. They had tried to silence her, but now her voice was echoing far beyond Ridgeview, and it was only the beginning. "We're with you." That's what some messages said, but not all the reactions were supportive. Local social media lit up with angry posts. Parents from Ridgeview shared defensive comments. "These accusations are destroying our school's reputation. My child says it's all being exaggerated. This girl is causing trouble just to get attention." By morning, the story had spread far beyond town limits. News vans lined the curb outside Ridgeview Middle School. Principal Whitaker sent out a mass email to all families, claiming the school was committed to diversity while denouncing those who seek to divide the community. In first period, Sierra noticed something. 3 empty seats. Troy, Chase, and Ryder hadn't come to school. Their parents had kept them home. Other students whispered and stared, but this time it felt different. Some eyes held quiet admiration, others bare hostility. At lunch, Madison, the girl who once helped humiliate Sierra, approached her table. "My dad's on the school board," she said, voice trembling slightly. "He's furious about the story. They're having an emergency meeting tonight." Sierra's face remained unreadable. "Thanks for telling me." Madison hesitated. "I should have spoken up about what they did to you. I'm sorry." Before Sierra could respond, her phone buzzed. A message from Nia. "Board meeting tonight, 7 p.m. They're discussing your case. Bring your father." That evening, Sierra and Dante pulled into the district office parking lot. It was full. Parents, students, reporters. Inside, the meeting room was packed. Tension hung thick in the air. Sheriff Hadley stood near the front, uniform crisp, face set in a tight mask of control. Board President Richard Dunham, Chase's father, called the meeting to order. "We're here to address concerns regarding student safety and recent disruptions at Ridgeview." Sierra felt a chill. The way he said student safety made it clear who he believed needed protection, and from whom. "Recent media coverage," Dunham continued, "has painted our school in a false light. We have reason to believe that certain individuals have deliberately escalated racial tensions for personal attention." Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. Dante placed a steady hand on Sierra's shoulder. She didn't move. "The board has reviewed footage, student statements, and disciplinary records," Dunham announced. "We are considering appropriate actions, including the expulsion of students whose behavior endangers the unity of our school community." Nia, seated 2 rows ahead, was scribbling furiously in her notepad. "This isn't about punishment," Dunham insisted, his eyes locking on Sierra. "This is about preserving order. We cannot allow disruptive influences to fracture our school family." Sheriff Hadley stepped forward. "As a parent and a law enforcement officer, I fully support the board. Anyone spreading false accusations, anyone inciting unrest, must face consequences." Sierra remained still, her father's lessons anchoring her breath. Hands shot up in the room, parents ready to defend their version of peace. Then the board secretary began to read. "Due to ongoing disruptions, promotion of division, and repeated violations of school policy, the board will now vote on the immediate expulsion of Sierra Carter." Phones were raised. Cameras rolled. Parents recorded every word. Sierra sat tall, composed. She knew what this was, a system protecting itself. And just like her father always said, let them show their true faces. Let them think they're winning. That's when they slip. The ride home was silent. Streetlights swept across the windshield in waves as Dante drove, his eyes steady on the road. Sierra stared out the window, mind replaying every moment of the meeting. When they pulled into the driveway, everything looked normal, until they stepped onto the porch. Crunch, glass underfoot. "Stay back," Dante said quietly, moving in front of her. The front window was shattered. A brick lay on the floor inside, surrounded by broken glass. Wrapped around it, a folded piece of paper held by a rubber band. Dante pulled out his phone and began documenting the scene. Photos from every angle. Old training kicked in. "Call 911, he told Sierra, "then wait in the car." She nodded but didn't leave his side. "Emergency services," came the dispatcher's voice. "Someone threw a brick through our window," Sierra reported, calm and direct. 3487 Oak Ridge Drive. While they waited, Dante used a towel to pick up the brick. He unwrapped the note and read it aloud. "You brought this on yourself. Leave." 20 minutes later, a single patrol car arrived. No lights, no sirens. Deputy Roberts stepped out slowly, looking bored. Sierra recognized him from school events. A longtime friend of Sheriff Hadley. "Evening," he said flatly. "Got a report of some property damage?" "Attempted intimidation," Dante corrected, holding up the evidence, now sealed in a plastic bag. "With a threat." Roberts barely looked at it. "I'll make a note of it." "No," Dante said. "You'll file a full report, and I want the incident number before you leave." The deputy blinked, surprised by the firm tone, then reluctantly pulled out his notepad. Inside, Sierra watched as her father handled everything with methodical calm. She had never been more certain of what they were doing, and more ready to see it through. "We'd like to file a formal complaint." Deputy Roberts barely reacted. He scribbled a few notes, made no effort to photograph the damage, and didn't so much as glance toward the shattered window. "Probably just kids playing around," he muttered. "This area's always been quiet, until recently." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Sierra could feel it, that shift in her father's energy. Not anger, precision, the same quiet intensity he had during their toughest training sessions. "Deputy," Dante said calmly, "I want your badge number and a case number, now." Something in his tone made Roberts stand up straighter. He finally pulled out his notepad. "I'll file the report," he said stiffly, "but with no witnesses or footage. There's not much we can do." "There is footage," Sierra said. All eyes turned to her. She pointed to their neighbor's house. "Mrs. Chen has a doorbell camera. It faces our yard." Roberts frowned. "I'll make a note. We'll also need the name of your department's evidence technician," Dante added. Roberts stiffened. "Look, Sheriff Hadley's department is stretched thin. We can't assign resources to every small incident." "Of course not," Dante replied smoothly. "That's why I'll also be contacting the FBI's Civil Rights Division. Intimidation following racial harassment falls under their jurisdiction." Roberts's face darkened. "That's unnecessary. We can handle things locally." "Like you handled the Noose at school?" Sierra asked quietly. The deputy didn't answer. He turned and walked toward his car. "I'll submit my report," he said over his shoulder. "Clean this up before someone gets hurt." After his patrol car disappeared, Sierra helped her father board up the broken window. They worked in silence, the rhythm familiar, functional, focused. "They're scared," Sierra said, holding the board steady. "Good," Dante replied, driving in another screw. "Scared people make mistakes." Inside, they swept up the glass carefully. Sierra noticed her father crouched near the point of impact, studying the trajectory, the spray pattern, the angle. "You're gathering intelligence," she said. "Always," Dante nodded. "Just like I taught you. The cameras might catch something." "Maybe," he said. "But what matters is, they showed us their hand, threats, property damage, a sheriff's deputy doing the bare minimum. It's all recorded now." Sierra understood. It was like sparring. You learned more from how someone attacked than what they said. Their reactions revealed who they really were. They finished cleaning. The boarded-up window made the living room darker, but neither turned on the light. They were used to the dark. Later that night, Sierra couldn't sleep. She went downstairs into the garage dojo where she'd trained since she could walk. The walls were lined with framed photos, her father's SEAL team, her own karate tournaments, a family timeline built through discipline. She stood silently until Dante joined her. He didn't say a word. He just stood beside her, both of them facing the wall of memories. "We don't run," Sierra said quietly. Dante nodded once. "Then we finish this." By the next afternoon, the Carter family kitchen table was covered in notebooks, files, and printed statements. Malik Jones sat nervously at one end, hands wrapped around a mug of hot chocolate Sierra had made him. His mother, Patricia, sat beside him, her expression hard and protective. "Take your time," Dante said gently. In the center of the table, a recorder blinked red. "Just tell us what happened." Malik hesitated. Then he spoke. "It started last year. Troy and his friends, they used to follow me to my locker. They'd whisper things like monkey, but only when teachers weren't around." He paused, glanced at his mom. "I didn't tell you because I thought it would make things worse." Patricia reached for his hand. "You should have told me, baby. They said if I talked, they'd get me expelled. Said their dads would make it happen." Sierra wrote everything down. Dante monitored the audio levels. They'd been doing this for 3 days, collecting witness statements, building their case brick by brick. "Did you report it to anyone?" Dante asked. "Once," Malik said. "I told Mr. Whitaker. He said without proof he couldn't do anything." Malik looked down. "Then I saw him laughing with Troy's dad at the school fundraiser that weekend." Before anyone could respond, the doorbell rang. Sierra checked the peephole, something she always did now. 3 more students stood on the porch with their parents. Word was spreading, quietly, but it was spreading. The Carters were fighting back, and others were ready to speak. By nightfall, they had 7 official testimonies. Each story echoed the same themes: targeted harassment, fear, silence, and a system that looked the other way. Some parents cried while their children spoke. Others sat stone-faced, arms folded, anger written across their faces. "This goes back years," Patricia said, flipping through the pages. "How did we let this happen?" "Fear," Dante answered. "They made everyone feel like they were alone." He looked around the room. "Not anymore." Sierra's phone buzzed. A message from Illa Norris, the civil rights attorney they had contacted. "On my way, be there in 20. 20 minutes later, right on time, Illa stepped through the door. She wore a long, dark coat, carried a briefcase worn from years of use, but still perfectly functional. She nodded to everyone in the room. "Let's get started." She had handled civil rights cases across 3 states and built a reputation for turning broken systems into lasting change. "This is exactly what we need," Illa said, scanning the growing stack of testimonies. "This isn't random, it's a pattern, and the law knows what to do with patterns." She spread the files across the Carters' kitchen table, now covered in documents, student statements, and outlines of school policy. "The school board's trying to rush Sierra's expulsion hearing," she said. "They want it over before we can organize." "Can they do that?" Sierra asked. "They can try," Illa replied with a confident smile, "but they don't know what's coming." From her briefcase, Illa pulled out motion templates, court precedents, and civil rights statutes. "First step, we file for an emergency injunction to block the expulsion. That buys us time. Next, we demand an external investigation into the district's handling of racial complaints." "The sheriff's office will fight back," Dante said. "Good," Illa answered. "Every time they resist, they prove our case." Sierra watched her work. The calm precision reminded her of her father planning tactical missions. Strategic, patient, always 3 steps ahead. "We'll need more than witness statements," Illa added. "Any visuals, screenshots, footage, emails, anything that shows how they ignored complaints or covered them up." "I have recordings," Sierra said, pulling out her phone. "Dozens of clips, classroom threats, hallway comments, whispered slurs." She hadn't stopped recording since the first day. "Perfect," Illa said. "And the camera footage from the locker room incident?" "The school claimed it was deleted," Dante replied. Illa made a note. "Then we include spoliation of evidence in the lawsuit." She worked deep into the night, typing with the speed of experience. The Carters brought her coffee while their kitchen transformed into a legal command center. Just before midnight, Illa sat back. "It's ready. 57 pages, multiple exhibits, federal statutes, case law from 8 states, and a motion for an emergency injunction." She slid the final page across the table. "I need both your signatures. Once we file this, there's no backing down. They will come after us." Sierra didn't flinch. She signed first, her name steady, her hand sure. Dante signed next, every letter deliberate, like one of his kata forms. "What happens next?" Sierra asked. "Tomorrow morning I file in federal court," Illa said. "By afternoon, the school board will be officially served. They'll have 48 hours to respond before the first hearing." She packed her briefcase with military efficiency. "The law's on our side. But more importantly, so is the truth. They've gotten away with this because no one fought back. Until now." At the door, Illa turned to Sierra. "You're not just fighting for yourself anymore. You're standing up for every student who didn't get this chance, and everyone who comes after you." Sierra nodded. It didn't feel like pressure, it felt like purpose. After Illa left, Dante and Sierra sat in the living room. The boarded-up window behind them was a reminder of the threats. The silence that followed was a reminder of what they were up against. "You ready for this?" Dante asked. Sierra thought about Malik, the other kids, the silence, the fear, the years. "They thought the noose would scare us," she said, "but it woke everyone up." The next morning, her phone buzzed nonstop. Too many notifications to process. Sierra passed it to her dad, overwhelmed. "It's everywhere," Dante said, scrolling. Someone had leaked the hallway footage. They watched it together on the living room TV. The clip was grainy, but the truth was unmistakable. Sierra walking calmly down the hall. Troy and his friends blocking her path. The basketball thrown at her head. Her clean dodge. Chase grabbing her wrist. Her defensive takedown. Swift, clean, controlled. Dante froze the frame. "Look at the timestamp," he said, "and the angle. This came from Ridgeview's internal cameras." "The ones they said were erased," Sierra whispered. Her phone rang. It was Illa. "Have you seen it?" she asked, skipping the greeting. "This changes everything. That's evidence tampering. We've got them." Outside their house, honking started. Sierra peeked out the window. A small group had gathered with signs. "Stand with Sierra. End racism at Ridgeview." News vans pulled up minutes later. Nia Reynolds was the first journalist on the scene, camera crew already recording. Sources confirmed that Ridgeview security footage was leaked this morning, Nia reported. It shows Sierra Carter being physically confronted by 3 male students. The school had previously claimed this footage no longer existed. Behind the curtain, Sierra watched the crowd grow. Some faces she recognized. Students, parents, even a few teachers watching quietly from their cars. Her social media exploded, friend requests, messages. But one thing stood out, a hashtag, Ridgeview Truth. She clicked on it. 2018. They carved racial slurs into my locker. Principal Whitaker said it was a prank. Ridgeview Truth. Troy's dad threatened to have my brother arrested if I reported what happened to me. We switched schools. Ridgeview Truth. One post, then another, then dozens. Stories, memories, wounds that had never been addressed, now flooding into the light. "Dad," she called out, holding up her phone. "Look." Dante leaned over. The wall was cracking, and truth was pouring through. "I was there," one post read, "when they cornered that Hispanic kid behind the gym. A teacher saw it, did nothing. Ridgeview Truth." And the stories kept coming. Years of silence, years of pain, now breaking open for everyone to see. Dante's phone rang. Principal Whitaker. He put it on speaker. "Mr. Carter," Whitaker's voice was strained, "in light of new information, we'd like to discuss dropping the expulsion." Dante cut him off. "Save it for the hearing. Everything goes on record now." By midday, hundreds had gathered outside Ridgeview Middle School. Students walked out of class. Parents joined them. News crews captured every moment. Former students, some from neighboring cities, arrived to share their own stories. Sierra watched it all unfold from the living room, still adjusting to seeing her name in news tickers. The hallway footage played on repeat. Her calm expression, her measured reaction, the truth now undeniable. "Sierra," her father called from his office, "you need to see this." He turned his laptop. Screenshots, sent anonymously, a private Instagram group chat. The messages were dated 3 months ago, right after Sierra transferred. Troy. "New girl thinks she's better than us." Chase. "Total attitude." Troy. "Time to teach her about ropes tomorrow." Ryder. "You're wild, man." Troy. "Dad says they only learn the hard way. The rope on the locker will shut her down." The account that posted the screenshots was called Truth Teller. No name, just a Ridgeview football jersey as the profile picture. "One of their own teammates," Sierra said quietly. Dante forwarded the screenshots to Illa. She called back within minutes. "This is direct evidence," she said. "Premeditated, targeted. It's a hate crime, and now it's in writing. The sheriff can't shield this. His son confessed." Sierra sat back, letting the weight of it all settle. The video, the stories, the threats. Now this, digital proof. She thought back to that morning at her locker, staring at the noose. How small she had felt. Now, hundreds of people were outside in the rain, holding signs with her name. What was meant to silence her had ignited something far bigger. Her father rested a hand on her shoulder. "You all right?" Sierra nodded slowly. "They thought that rope would shut everyone up," she said, "but it made them louder." Outside, the crowd was chanting. No more silence, no more fear. The next morning, Sierra ate breakfast at the kitchen table. The boarded-up window still stood behind her, a reminder of how far this had come. The TV showed grainy footage of Principal Whitaker walking briskly to his car, dodging reporters' questions. His resignation letter had leaked online overnight. 2 hollow paragraphs about pursuing other opportunities and spending time with family. Dante folded the newspaper. 3 investigators from the Department of Education arrived yesterday, he said. They've already taken over the conference room. They're combing through 5 years of complaints. Sierra's phone buzzed. Text from Malik. Principal's gone. Teachers acting different. Things feel lighter. She'd noticed it too. Yesterday, her English teacher had moved her seat away from Troy's group without being asked. The gym teacher, who once blamed her for everything, couldn't even meet her eyes. That afternoon, the school board held a live press conference. Sierra and Dante watched from Illa's office. At the podium, board president Margaret Chen looked visibly uncomfortable. After reviewing extensive evidence, she began, we acknowledge failures in how Ridgeview Middle School has handled racial harassment complaints. We apologize to the students and families who were ignored, dismissed, or silenced. Behind her, board members shifted uneasily. We found multiple instances where reports were minimized or buried. That pattern ends now. Illa jotted down key phrases, circling them. They're trying to preempt the department's findings, she said. Watch, someone's about to get thrown under the bus. She was right. The board announced sweeping reforms, new reporting protocols, anonymous hotlines, disciplinary procedure overhauls. 2 administrators were placed on immediate suspension. They also promised new diversity training, inclusion initiatives, community liaisons. Dante muttered under his breath, too little, too late. The federal investigators moved fast. They interviewed teachers, students, and parents, reviewed emails, analyzed security footage and disciplinary records. Each day brought more revelations. Troy, Chase, and Ryder had stopped attending altogether. Their families claimed it was voluntary, but everyone knew the truth. They were hiding from the spotlight. One week in, Sierra was called in for her official interview. She brought everything, her recordings, the screenshots, her timeline of incidents. Dr. Williams, the lead investigator, reviewed the hallway footage again, pausing on the moment Chase grabbed her wrist, and the precise takedown that followed. You showed remarkable restraint, Dr. Williams said, and extraordinary discipline. Sierra said nothing, but her posture, straight, grounded, said everything. Most students would have reacted on instinct, the investigator said, reviewing the hallway footage again. Sierra answered quietly, My father taught me control and patience. That afternoon, the investigators interviewed Troy. Sierra saw him through the office window, red-faced, furious, storming toward the parking lot with his father, the sheriff, trailing behind. Reporters shouted questions. Neither of them answered. The next morning, the department released its preliminary findings, and it was damning. Later that day, the school board held an emergency press conference. Board President Margaret Chen stood stiffly behind the podium. Based on conclusive evidence of coordinated race-based harassment culminating in a symbol of hate placed on a student's locker, Ridgeview Middle School is expelling Troy Hadley, Chase Dunham, and Ryder Keene permanently. Their actions violated multiple federal civil rights laws. At the back of the room, Sheriff Hadley stood up and walked out. No comment, no eye contact, just rage. Chase's father, a board trustee, had already resigned the week before. Ryder's family had disappeared from public view the day those Instagram screenshots surfaced. By the time Sierra walked through the halls that afternoon, things already felt different. The stares had changed, not mocking, but quiet, uncertain. Students who once laughed behind her back now avoided her gaze. And those who had been silent? They were beginning to speak. Madison, the girl who'd helped set Sierra up during her first week, approached between classes. I'm sorry, she said, barely audible. I knew it was wrong, but I was scared of them too. Sierra nodded but kept walking. Some apologies come too late. In the cafeteria, Sierra now sat with Malik. Other students began joining their table, first other black and brown students who had once kept to themselves, and then a few white classmates who, finally, found their courage. "They thought that noose would scare us," Malik said, nodding at the ripple of change around them. "Instead, it woke everyone up." Sierra looked around the room. Conversations crossed old lines. New voices rose. The social walls? Cracking. And the investigation wasn't over. The Department of Education had expanded their probe to include other schools in the district. But at Ridgeview, change had already taken root. The silence was broken, and no one could push the truth back down. Weeks later, the main hall of the Youth Summit buzzed with energy. Hundreds of students from across the state filled the seats. Many wore Stand Against Hate shirts. Unity banners hung from the walls. Backstage, Sierra adjusted her blazer, a gift from Dante for this day. Her hands didn't shake, but her heart pounded. She reached for the small medal around her neck, a karate medallion from her first tournament win. 5 minutes, someone called. Dante stood nearby, eyes steady. "Just speak your truth," he said. Sierra nodded. The words she'd practiced for days now felt heavier, realer. On stage, the moderator's voice echoed. "Our next speaker showed us that the strongest response to hate isn't violence. It's calm, unwavering courage. Please welcome Sierra Carter." Applause. Flashes. A standing ovation before she even spoke. Sierra walked to the podium. In the front row, Malik. Behind him, Ridgeview students. At the back, Layla, Nia Reynolds, notebook in hand, recording it all. Sierra took a breath. 3 months ago, she began, someone put a noose on my locker. The room went silent. They thought it would scare me, break me, make me quit. She scanned the crowd. Instead, it made me stronger. She told the story, not just about that day, but about every dismissal, every cover-up, every system built to protect the wrong people. "We didn't fight with fists," she said. "We fought with truth, with facts, with dignity, and we won." Her voice grew stronger. "Not just for me, but for every student who's been told to stay quiet, to take the high road, to let bullies walk free. My father taught me, true strength isn't about hurting others. It's about standing your ground while keeping your dignity. About fighting smart, not angry." When she finished, the crowd erupted. Tears. Applause. Phones held high. A moment that wouldn't be forgotten. Backstage, Dante hugged her tightly. "Proud of you, baby girl." The rest of the summit was a blur. Workshops, panels, connections. Sierra met students from other towns, facing their own fights. They exchanged numbers, shared tactics, promised to stand together. That night, Sierra and Dante sat at their favorite pizza place. A booth in the back, split pepperoni and mushroom, laughter over soda. The fight wasn't over, but the fear? That was gone. And in its place, a movement had begun. The TV above the bar flashed with breaking news. The Department of Education's investigation was expanding. "Did you hear about Troy?" Sierra asked, reaching for another slice of pizza. Dante nodded slowly. "Sheriff Hadley resigned this morning. The federal probe into his conduct was too much." Sierra added, "Malik said Chase's family is moving. Their house is up for sale. His dad lost his job after those racist emails leaked." She paused. "And Ryder? No private school will take him. His dad's company just lost 3 big contracts. They're talking bankruptcy." They sat in silence for a moment, letting it all sink in. The bullies hadn't just destroyed their own futures. They'd shaken their families' reputations, careers, and legacies. Dante looked at her. "Do you feel bad for them?" Sierra thought for a long second. "No," she said. "They chose hate. They chose cruelty. And they did it believing their parents' power would protect them." She took a sip of her soda. "They never thought there would be real consequences." Dante nodded. "Because they never had to face them before." On screen, news footage played of Sheriff Hadley walking out of a press conference, resigned, exposed. Sierra watched. "They thought that noose would silence me," she said, "but it did the opposite. It gave us proof of their hate, of the cover-ups, of a system built to protect them." Her phone buzzed. A text. Another student from the summit. Any advice on documenting discrimination at my school? Sierra smiled faintly as she typed a reply. The fight's not over, is it? She asked. No, Dante said, but now they know. We're ready, and we're not alone. Outside, the sky had turned purple. Life moved on. Cars passed. Lights blinked on across the street. But for Sierra, nothing was the same. The school had changed. The community had changed. And she had changed most of all. She was no longer the quiet girl in the hallway. She was the girl who stood up, who fought smart, who turned silence into truth, and turned a symbol of hate into a movement for justice. She didn't just survive it, she changed everything.